This is me. My name's John Corr. I'm a Senior Projects Manager for Global Motion. We're a business that specialises in moving entertainers around the world, particularly musicians. So live music touring is the top of our list of our projects, but we also do project freight, theatre, film and television, and just recently added orchestras. Some of the people we're working for at the moment, Coldplay, Ed Sheeran, and I'm also working for Celine Dion. She gets ready to start playing shows again in September. I've worked around the world for 26 years, including Beyonce, Madonna, Hugh Jackman, the Rolling Stones, U2, and many, many more. This presentation is going to concentrate on the tracking thing. The other parts of the presentation I'm doing again in about 2 hours in the theatre down there, which explains what we do to work out how a tour can happen. Can we get the stuff from continent to continent in the time that artist has given us? This talk is more about having come up with a plan, how we make sure the plan happens and the shows go on time without fail. I'll quickly say here, the Generation Logistics says logistics is right thing, right place, right time. For us, it has to be every time, and everything we plan has to be 100% certain, because if we don't deliver on time, it's a little bit more inconvenient than you not being able to buy your favourite pizza in Tesco's because the truck didn't come in with the pineapple pizzas this morning. If we don't deliver on time, the show is at risk, and that can be a major financial loss. So everything we do is about making sure on-time delivery happens, and we've achieved it, never missed the deadline in the 24 years that the company's existed. So we plan and budget, and we're allowed to use whichever mode of transport we think is reliable, cost-effective, and if possible, environmentally sustainable as well. And then this is the main focus of the talk. Having secured the tour and having the moves underway, we have to make sure that nothing happens that avoids a delivery being missed. We have to make sure that we achieve the on-time delivery every time. So on the right of that screen is my email inbox a couple of days ago. There are no active messages in it, but each of those inboxes has different messages coming from different tracking resources that give me different interpretations of the same information. And we're looking at the same questions with different people because we've discovered that they don't all agree on the answer. Sometimes the person that tells us there's a problem first is wrong and there isn't a problem, but more often than not, they've seen a problem that the others haven't yet identified. I got an email this morning at 1 o'clock that tells me 3 vessels I was thinking of using out of North America have all gone back by a week, which means I can't use them anymore. So I spent a couple of hours this morning trying to find an alternative plan, which I'm working on. Had discussions with someone yesterday, and I'll continue the discussions over the next couple of days. I can't afford not to have that equipment delivered to the arena for the rehearsals that person's going to do. So every day I look through all those emails and decide which of them give me information that's critical. So, and these are the things we're tracking on the left-hand side, the published schedule. So that's the message I got this morning, that a published schedule from a major carrier isn't happening as they said it would. I need to take steps to change that. I also check vessel progress. If a vessel that we're going to load in 5 weeks' time is running a week late today, it isn't going to be on time when we go to load it in 5 weeks' time. The earlier I know vessels are running behind schedule, the earlier I can make decisions to put it onto another vessel. We also, having delivered containers to the port, make sure the carrier puts them on the ship. 99.99% of the time they do, but very occasionally we spot they forgot to load one, and then we can step in and try and recover the situation. We've had to deliver containers from Southampton to Antwerp already this year, to catch the same vessel that left Southampton without important containers on. Port conditions. I'll show you some diagrams or screenshots in a minute, but just because the vessel's heading towards a port doesn't mean to say the port's going to let it in. Ports are congested, previous vessels are on the berth, and the ship may sit outside for 2 or 3 days before it's allowed in. We need to know if that's going to happen, particularly if we've got critical containers on the vessel. Airway bills and containers. Ocean is the most unreliable means of transport we use. Only 70% of ships in the world arrive on time. Some carriers are better. Some of the small independent carriers achieve close to 100%. The Maersk Hapag-Lloyd service called Gemini is also achieving good results, although it had a bad start to the year. But on the whole, ships are days late, generally, sometimes weeks late. You have to factor that into your planning, and if the delays are bigger than you expected, you have to step in and take other action. And I'll show you an example of that. I'll talk about an example of that. You have to make sure stuff is loaded on planes and is being handled correctly. And we also can track, and we started to track certain key documents more frequently as well now. We've had customs documents go missing between Heathrow and Athens. The world's favourite airline lost the document, couldn't find it in Athens, so we couldn't clear the shipment and deliver it. So we've now started to put tracking devices in customs documents so we know where they are, even if the airline's lost them. So here's an example of published schedules. These are vessels we're going to load potentially in the middle of July to come to Southampton, Zeebrugge and Antwerp. And it's some of those vessels. That's only a screenshot of a much, much longer list. Some of those vessels are the ones that are not running on time now, so we're going to have to replace some of those with new vessels to keep us back on track. And I get a message 1 o'clock every morning that tells me the ETA in their next port for every vessel we're interested in, which is on another screen from that same company that shows the tracking. So that's the one on the right there. That's the ETAs of every vessel that we're going to put containers on, where it is at 1 o'clock in the morning, where it's heading to and when they expect it there. The map on the left, is the actual physical vessels. I'm not sure if this laser pointer is working. What I can say is, I'm not sure how good your geography is, but the 2 vessels near Singapore. This was done last Friday. The one slightly further north has now taken its container off in Singapore. The other vessel went to Malaysia first, and we'll be back to Singapore tomorrow to pick that container up and take it to Sydney. The English Channel is a bit congested, but one of those was a container that was coming in. In fact, it was 12 containers coming back from Los Angeles for Florence and the Machine. That vessel actually sat outside Southampton for a day before it could find a berth. But those containers are now all discharged and in the port of Southampton, ready for us to pick them up and deliver them for unloading tomorrow. The other vessels are all for this project, coming to Europe in the middle of August. Some of those vessels are currently in Australia and New Zealand and starting to head back across the Pacific to pick up shipments from Philadelphia. The orange ones are ships coming out of Norfolk, going to Antwerp again for that same project. And the lime green ones in Montreal are the ones that we've got a problem with, because all of those vessels are now running a week late. And I've discovered that the vessel we would now use is currently between Madagascar and South Africa, heading towards Europe before it goes to Montreal. I have a suspicion that one's going to be even later. So again, we're looking at a new plan, and if I showed you my computer screen now, there'd be 4 new vessels on there, because we found an alternative service between alternative ports which we might use to move those containers. So, and this is the container tracking information. I get an email at 8 o'clock every morning that tells me if the status of any container that we're actively shipping at the moment has changed. It's a little bit of a tedious message, because if you've got 12 containers, it sends you the same message 12 times, once for each container. That was Florence and the Machines equipment arriving into Southampton. When they had an updated ETA for the ship, they sent me the same message telling me all 12 containers would arrive at the same time on the same ship. But it's useful. If I'd only got 11 messages, I'd have known there was a problem. That's more interesting when the ship's leaving, because if you only get 11 messages and there are 12 containers, one of them's been misplaced or misrecognized. And the container at the top is coming from the UK to Sydney. That's the container that came off the vessel in Singapore yesterday, and we'll go on to a new vessel in Singapore later on tomorrow. We can also use it to see when the container leaves the terminal to be delivered to the client, and also when the empty container gets back to the port, because we are charged if we keep the container for too long without returning it once it's empty. And this is the other thing we're doing. We've started to put trackers in our containers, which helps us with port information. Where is the container in the port? So I also look at all the tracking sites for all the ports we're using to see when they think the ships are going to arrive, which may be different to when we're being told the vessel could arrive. Have the port made it available. Airway bill and courier tracking. If you buy anything from Amazon, you kind of get that as part of your Amazon Prime tracking. It's available from DHL, it's available from UPS, it's available from Federal Express. It's just good practice to set up and request all their automatic tracking information. We're also putting Hapag-Lloyd have introduced trackers on their containers, so they can tell you the temperature of the container, the moisture content inside the container, where the container is, if it's been mishandled and subject to shock loads. But that only works for Hapag-Lloyd. We've actually acquired trackers so we can enable every container we use with data that shows how well the container is performing on the journey. And the last one is to overcome that problem with missing customs documents. That was someone who took a brass band to Budapest from the UK, and we gave them an ATA carnet, which is a customs document, so they could leave the UK and enter Europe without having to pay duty and VAT on deposit. And that report showed us where the van driver was every hour from when he left the loading point in West London to when he arrived in Budapest to when he arrived back to unload the instruments back. And I now know where the person who booked that project lives, because every week it tells me the carnet is still at his house and I must get it back off him. But as I say, that's something we're going to do much more of, because carnets are a valuable customs document. If you lose it, there are quite significant financial implications. So we now put tracking in all of our carnets, because a lot of our clients are using air tags in their individual cases and their individual products. So they know where things are, so we need to know where they are too. That was a very quick run through. Sorry if it was a bit rushed. So it's part of a bigger presentation, which I'm going to do the other half of in the other theatre down here in about an hour and a half. And I've also said, if any of the teachers who are here are interested in a bigger talk about this subject with more interactive content and more use of the live tracking sites, then please reach out to me and I'll happily try and come and give you a full presentation with a little bit less of a rush, if that's okay. Are there any questions?
What was the furthest country that you shipped from?
I've worked in every country, in most major country in the world. If I'm in Europe, the furthest I ship to is Australia. If I'm in Australia, the furthest I ship to is probably Houston. You know, we chartered a ship from Perth, Western Australia to Houston for Ed Sheeran. We chartered a ship from Miami to Hull for Coldplay last week. I've flown on a plane from Perth to Los Angeles with cargo for Beyonce. I've flown on a plane from New York to Doncaster when it was still open on a plane with stages for Beyonce. So there are no two places in the world we wouldn't be asked to get stuff from and to. So every distance is possible. For the really long distances and really large shipments, we would try and use sea, but if necessary, we'll hire planes. You know, we'll hire 3 or 4 planes if that's the only solution. So all good. Thanks very much.